Everyone has dreamed of ditching the corporate job and pursuing their passion. Bradley Brown has actually done it. I'm Jack Otter, editor of Barons.com. I'm here with Bradley Brown, proprietor of Big Basin Vineyards and the winemaker, of course. So, Bradley, you were a software guy in the 90s. You sold high and ran off to start this winery. Tell us about that.
That's right. Well, I was pretty fortunate. I had a 14-year stint in Silicon Valley, just working through different companies as more of a marketing business guy, and managed to play my cards right. And right around 2000, around 98, I first had this inkling, this isn't exactly my passion. As much as I'm having a great time in this business and fulfilling a dream, I wanted something a little bit more in my life. So I said, well, I've had this lifelong passion of wine. I love sort of being rooted to the earth. I said, okay, I'm going to buy a piece of property where I can plant a vineyard. And so that's where the whole genesis happened. And I bought a piece of land in the Santa Cruz mountains. And then around 2001, I finally got out of Silicon Valley, sort of just in time, as you will. It was pretty good timing. Yeah, not too bad. And I'd actually planted the first vineyard block in 2000, and we made our first wine starting in 2002.
That all sounds easy on paper, but in fact, you learned a lot of lessons between then and now. What would you tell wannabe entrepreneurs, maybe 3 things you've learned?
Well, one aspect of it was that I was probably slightly naive. The amount of work and effort required to start a vineyard and a winery from scratch is pretty tremendous. So I'd say probably the first thing is really you've got to do your research. You've got to know your business that you're getting into. And you can never know too much about where you're going. And to some extent, maybe being naive was a good thing.
You weren't too scared.
Yeah. So, my experience in my life has always been I've always succeeded at whatever I've done. So I kind of felt like I can do this. And I did. I plunged myself into it full head first. And I think the second thing is you've got to be passionate about it. There's got to be a deep-rooted passion, something that really drives you.
Gets you up in the morning.
Gets you up in the morning. And, wine is one of these businesses that you see a lot of people get into. People who make money and they say, okay, I want to do wine. There's all this glamour associated with it. And really, it's not all glamorous. There are beautiful parts of the business that I love. And I got into it because I like the people. And, but there's, I've actually done a lot of the farming myself, getting up at 5 in the morning and riding the tractor through the vineyard, and there's aspects.
You're not a gentleman farmer. You actually had to eventually turn a profit.
Absolutely.
How's that working out?
So that's the other aspect of it is sort of your business plan. And the best laid business plans don't always pan out. So on that respect, it's you've got to make sure that you've got a cushion. You've got to have probably more than your worst case business model is going to actually project that you're going to probably need. Because you don't want to get into a situation where you're at the 11th hour of success, where everything is going in the right direction, and suddenly you're hitting empty. So, actually, my sister is a business partner of mine, and in the wine business, I'd been told by some people it's maybe better to keep it in the family. But I can see the downside of that too.
Well, that's an important point because one of the first rules of entrepreneurs is you don't mix blood and money. You don't want to be at the Thanksgiving table with your family whose money you've lost in your crazy venture. You managed to make that work. How did that work with the family dynamics? And did you have to sign very serious contracts so everyone knew what they were getting into?
Well, I think my sister's just a really firm believer in what I'm doing. And yeah, so I think maybe my case is special. But, and I think there was just always a feeling like it was going to be successful. And we're turning the corner now. It took me a lot longer than I expected. And,
hence the cushion.
Maybe we've had to go back to the well more times than we expected to keep funding the business. And, they say in the wine business, it takes a large fortune to make a small fortune in the wine business is kind of the saying. But, so maybe not all businesses are like that. It's a very capital intensive business. But I think in my story, it will work out. But boy, if it wasn't working out, I can see that maybe that wouldn't have been the best scenario.
So Wine Advocate wrote about you and your wines. As good as these wines are, and they're often outstanding, my feeling is that Brown has just scratched the surface of his potential. That's nice coming from Wine Advocate. Tell us about, the wine shelf is crowded out there when you go to a liquor store, and your wines aren't cheap. What makes them worth the sticker price?
Well, I think it all comes down to the vineyard. The wines are made in the vineyard, so it's choosing really great sites. And fortunately, we're located in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and that was always my belief. You've got some iconic brands like Ridge and Mount Eden there. They've been making wine for as long as any other winery in the country. And I always felt like this was an underappreciated appellation. So, we have this incredible terroir, the vines we're working with. And this particular wine is from the Gabilan Mountains, which is the next mountain range south. Also home to really iconic brands like Chalone and Calera Mount Harlan that were formed back in the 70s.
And Mount Harlan has now become a cult wine.
It is, yeah, Calera. It's a cult wine. And so, we have really put our heart into these wines, our heart and soul into them, and I've been very informed by old world winemaking traditions. And so these wines have that energy, that vitality, that vibrance, and the aromatic complexity that people come to expect in the old world. And these days, it's something that's becoming more popular, and there's kind of a new movement afoot. I'm here for In Pursuit of Balance in New York. And
the idea there is that they're not heavily oaked, that they're balanced, and that
they're not too ripe. They're not
style.
Exactly.
Now, also, you use a biodynamic, fully organic process. Is that right?
Our state vineyard is certified organic, so I believe very much in sustainable long-term farming and organics. We're not biodynamic per se, but we have attributes of that into our program.
Now, I'm sorry we can't share this with all the viewers. I get lucky, but you can describe what's going on in the glass here.
Okay. So this particular wine is a Pinot Noir from the Gabilan Mountains. It's from a vineyard just south of Mount Harlan. It sits at 2,200 feet overlooking Monterey Bay in the Salinas Valley. It's absolutely just, the view alone is worth the trip to the vineyard. And
you get to see that every morning?
Well, not this vineyard. This isn't the estate, but the estate vineyard also has just epic, amazing views. But this is kind of like our estate away from the estate, if you will. And this wine, it has this perfume, it has this energy and intensity on the palate. There's a lot of structure and body in this particular Pinot. And this is very evocative of these soils of the Gabilan Mountain, the decomposed granite and limestone soils.
I've had your 2009. This is not as fruit forward. It's a little bit more French and restrained.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. Thanks very much, Bradley.
All right. Cheers, Jack.